Okay, so in this section, we are going to talk about the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. That's right, we're going to talk about the Bill of Rights. And just kind of looking down here at my Word doc, um, the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments, was promised to the colonies before the Constitution was ratified. Said, yeah, look, we'll get you your Bill of Rights, just sign it anyways and trust us. And then they did. 2 years later, they approved this Bill of Rights. I believe that they wrote 12, but then they narrowed it down to 10. Um, so that kind of shows the honorable nature of government in that time period. Some will suggest that has changed. And here we have it, 10 rights that all Americans have. So what are these rights? Let's break this down one by one. Okay? First Amendment, freedom. And it's interesting, Judge Amy Coney Barrett in the confirmation hearing yesterday was asked the 5 freedoms that are guaranteed in the First Amendment. And she answered 4, but arguably it's up for interpretation if there's actually 5 or if there's 4. But we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of petition, which is the right to redress or protest against your government, freedom of assembly, and then freedom of the press. 5. Again, and the ones that she mixed up protest and assembly. Sometimes we call those 2 different rights, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes, oh no, that's kind of it's the same thing. So we're not going to hold her accountable and say that she failed. She's a very bright woman, and it was just an interesting question from a Democratic senator. We discussed before that Democrats are playing gotcha on her. They're trying to make her look bad, and Republicans are trying to make her look good. It's just the partisan nature of 2020 politics. It's such a divided moment. But anyways, yes, 5 guarantees. The first right, speech, the press, the media, religion, the right to assemble, and then the right to protest your government if you disagree with them. The Second Amendment to the Constitution is also a controversial one, and it has to do with the right to bear arms and the right to form a militia. The question is, well, what kind of arms are we talking about? Do you have the right to own a gun? Because it doesn't say gun. Do you have the right to own a missile launcher or maybe a tank, or maybe I can get me a jet fighter? Wait a minute, give me a nuke. I have the right to own nuclear bombs, right? Like where's the line? I mean, and currently our government is kind of debating it out. They're saying, should we allow people to own machine guns? Should we allow people to own AR-15s, assault rifles? Should they be able to have a 100-round drum where you can attach and shoot? Should they be able to make these guns fully automatic by adding a conversion kit? These kind of questions are where we're at. So in the broad spectrum, we've narrowed it down, and our government has decided that the right to bear arms does mean you have the right to own a gun. But now we're questioning what kind of gun. Can you have a machine gun? Can you have an automatic weapon? Can you have a 100-round clip? Or should we narrow it down and say, no, you can't only have a 10 or a 15-round clip? In the 90s, there was a ban on assault rifles, which some call machine guns, and because they can be converted into machine guns. And they also said you can only have a 10-round clip. You can't have a 30-round clip or a 100-round drum. And that included handguns. That you can't have a 30-round clip on a handgun. All of these questions are up for interpretation. And earlier, some of you mentioned that you wish the Constitution was more specific. This is one area where it is vague, and there's different people with different opinions. Also, this militia thing, right? You have the right to form a militia. Well, we're seeing that there's kind of a growth of militias in our country over the last 10 or 20 or even 30 years. These people should the militia be state sponsored? Should it be connected to the government, or do these people have the right to form their own little private armies, which are heavily armed and could be used potentially in some kind of war? So these Second Amendments are really controversial one. Third Amendment is you don't have to quarter soldiers. The English used to make the colonists house soldiers that they sent over here. Not just that, but they got the bed. They would tell the colonists, you guys have the couch and the soldier gets your bed. So that's kind of a harsh one. They said, you can't do that anymore. Fourth Amendment to the Constitution has to do with search and seizure, when you can be searched, or your house or your car. Again, remember, they didn't have cars back then, right? Was it written for the carriage? Can your carriage be searched? No, but the Supreme Court and the government has decided that, how this applies to cars. So again, the specificity of the Constitution is very vague, and it allows for interpretation. That was really meant more for your house. The right to search your house without a warrant. They can't search your house without a warrant, right? The Fifth Amendment is a weird one. It's oftentimes the one, like, I take the Fifth, but you don't have to testify against yourself in court. But there's also this element of double jeopardy where you can't be tried for the same crime that you've been found guilty for twice. So like, once you're found innocent, you're innocent, right? And this kind of came up in the OJ trial when a lot of people disagreed that OJ was found innocent. They said you should try him again. You can't. The Fifth Amendment says you can, right? Sixth Amendment is the right to a trial, a speedy trial. So 6 through 8 all have to do with your rights in court, which are incredibly important rights. These are rights that have been fought for. The Magna Carta of 1215 says you have the right to a trial by jury of your peers. The next one says you have the right to a speedy trial. So not only do you have the right to a trial, innocent to found guilty, right to a trial, but then it has to be quick, right? You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to arrest you, and your trial is going to be in 100 years. See you then, right? No. Right to a speedy trial. So you have the right to a trial by jury, it can be a speedy trial, and there can be no, Eighth Amendment, no cruel or unusual punishments. And this one is kind of in play in our modern world as well. People will say things like, punishment needs to fit the crime. Okay, and if you're going to argue that someone who evaded arrest, got shot and killed, in 1986, they made a law that says you can't shoot someone in the back without a weapon who's not threatening you, right? But nowadays, we are seeing that sometimes people are being shot in the back as they're walking away from you and they're not threatening you. And the question is then, that is a crime, right? Stop or I'll shoot. Crime. You didn't stop. Now I'm going to shoot. But does that punishment fit the crime? Or is that cruel or unusual punishment? So these questions apply. Our Constitution, these parts of our Constitution are fresh and apply. 6 through 8 have to do with your right in court. 9 is kind of a vague one, but 10th is incredibly important as well. It has to do with states' rights. And it says anything not in this Constitution, it's up to the state to decide. So that's where we get things like, arguably the Republican side would say that Roe v. Wade, abortion rights, it's not, excuse me, no, you cannot. Yep. 10th Amendment, again, has to do with states' rights, and anything not in the Constitution is up to the states. Remember, each state was supposed to have a level of sovereignty, a level of freedom, of independent freedom. And then they should be able to have their own laws. So I brought up earlier that the Roe v. Wade. If Roe v. Wade is struck down by the courts, it's not like abortion would be ended, but each state could decide, right? Because each state should have the right under the 10th Amendment to decide anything that's not in that Constitution. So again, fresh topics that are going to be coming up in your lifetimes involved in these first 10 amendments. And we find the connections. How does that connect to, how does abortion connect to the Constitution? Oh, well, here's how. 10th Amendment, and actually Roe v. Wade uses the 14th Amendment to allow for abortion, the equal protections right and privacy in the 14th Amendment. So they will pick and choose small chunks of the Constitution or the amendments to try and prove their case. And I don't know what the right answer to any of this is. I know some of you were arguing that the Constitution should be less vague. That is too vague the way it is, and it should be more specific. Again, I don't know. But I value all of your opinions, and I thank you for sharing them.